Hi, and welcome to Download Radio. I'm your host, Mike, and yet again we're plunging deep into my mind and possibly yours. The topic for today, or tonight, whenever you plan to listen to this, I guess it's the difference of soul and consciousness. And here's my outlooks and whatnot, and maybe I hope to get some feedback from the listeners, and maybe we can have one big discussion about it. So, let's get a little summer cleaning out of the way. Or spring, summer. Well, I guess technically now it's summer. Yeah, so anyway, it's been a long time since the last episode of Download Radio. I apologize, but I won't say that I'm going to be better or worse. Just that I do occasionally think of the podcast, and, well, here I am. Sometimes I do come out of the woodwork and I do want to make a video, or sorry, a podcast. So here I am. I've been pondering this quite often, and that is, what is consciousness? What is the soul? Are they the same or are they different? Well, I guess it could be different for everybody, but this is obviously my take on the question, how I perceive consciousness, how I perceive the soul, and, ultimately, I believe that they're different from one another. I guess I can start by saying that I believe the soul is something that can... I suppose if I had to really think about it, I would say that the soul is, well, for lack of a better word, I think it's just the essence of life. And, well, obviously all living things must have a soul. They're not a hollowed out husk of a living creature. You can't have life without a soul. It's quite simple when you really put it like that. But I think consciousness is quite different, and I think it has something to do with a level of free will, whereas most, if not all, other animals act upon instinct, and I think instinct is more inclined with a soul, but I think very limited species have a consciousness. It's weird because it's like, to say that humans, though, are the only creatures that have a consciousness is kind of, well, I don't know. I tend to believe that, maybe other primates, like maybe dolphins, maybe elephants, maybe they have a level of consciousness because of how hyper intelligent they tend to be, right? Like, we can see with elephants that they have a level of compassion that is quite scary when you look at it. You don't really see that with, other animals, right? And, with other primates, they've come to what now, like a stone age of their own. Like, it's quite interesting to take a look at that. They have wars, they have tribes. To say that, they just act purely on instinct, I don't know, that just doesn't resonate with me. But yeah, I mean, thinking about it, once you start kind of talking about free will, you have to ask yourself, is there really a such thing as free will, or is it simply just an illusion of free will? And that's where things tend to get a little tricky. And I think it gets a little tricky because if you start to lean towards the multi-universe theory, um, you start to think, you know, maybe this is all just an illusion of free will. Here's a perfect example, right? So, say there's a fork in the road, and there's a left and there's a right direction, right? In that moment where you have a decision to make, a split occurs, both leading to a different day, you know, and that's just one example. Throughout your entire day, every time a decision is, put into your hands, put into your lap, what have you, a split where you chose the other decision is now a reality in that other multi-universe, So it's wild because, once you start going down that rabbit hole, there's just an infinite number of possibilities, and it can get a little murky, going down that rabbit hole even further. If I'd have to give like a personal opinion, I would say that there isn't free will, just merely an illusion of free will. And, you may ask the question, isn't it your free will choices which actually splits you from the previous sequence? Well, my rebuttal to that is yes, but also the choice might actually lead to the same result. We don't really know this, but with every option, an infinite number of reactions to that choice can happen. But because of multiverse, all those are valid and must happen. But what we get seem, you don't see it, but I'm putting up air quotations, they seem random because we can only experience the one reaction. Though, you could say, if you imagine the other option, you can argue that you're experiencing a mock reaction that could also be valid in another multiverse. Going further, you can say that if a species can understand foresight on their decisions and consequences, that itself is a level of consciousness. Another question that I've kind of been thinking about myself, and maybe you as the listener have as well, is that why is it we only experience one sequence of this multiverse? Well, some can argue that your current living universe is your best case scenario. Going deeper into this, in every other string or multiverse universe, whatever you want to call it, it all leads to some disaster, maybe. Again, this is just my speculation. It's hard to want to accept this because we see people die or get very sick, etc. But you could argue that in their best case scenario universe, they are alive and well. But obviously in that universe, maybe you're dead. It goes really deep, that speculation. I like to think for it to be stable, you need to see balance, right? Not everyone you care about can live forever. They might die, but those, who's to say they don't move to another universe or multiverse where they are alive and well. But the problem arrives that you need to die at some point, like due to old age. But maybe less and less multiverse versions of yourself run out of time at later dates. You can try to visualize this as maybe like lines, right? Like these lines, each of those lines represent a multiverse. I'm sorry, a multiverse version of yourself. right? And think of a line, one in particular, that keeps on going. Next to those lines are all the other universes moving at the same point. Your soul and or consciousness will transfer to the best and long-lasting existence. Again, this is all just, my personal speculation. Don't take anything I say as fact. But, you might be asking, what if you do something that was not part of any of those multiverses? Because then you quit being near those lines of time that move forward for reasons of safety or whatever. And, to my answer to that is I don't think it's possible, to move outside of those lines, because remember, an infinite number of, multiverses exist, an unfathomable, geez, English sometimes. Oh, okay. Anyway, I think everything and anything has to do with your existence. When you higher or lower your frequency, it's still within your limits, The only way to detach from the multiverse would be to exist outside of existence, which, well, at that point, you'd be what's considered to be God itself. Think about it. Even before you were born, you had life on this planet. Everything finally came to you. And what I mean by that is that you were destined to be born. Period. You could argue that it was just a chance, just a random act of chance. But I don't think that's the case, We joke and say reject humanity and return to monkey. Well, the funny thing is, yeah, those monkey or human precursors housed the very DNA that's in us now. So even though we didn't exist, it was only a matter of time until we did. You could say the same about Earth or the other planets, our sun. It goes on and on and on. The code was there, and it was just a matter of time. And I'm putting that in quotations because, time is a human construct. We just give it a value. You know what I mean? So, continuing on, I want to talk a little bit about my perception of what God is, right? Now, this is coming from somebody who was a solid atheist long throughout his almost entire life up to this point. So again, don't take anything I say as literal, as fact, as true. This is simply my perception of what God is. So, my theory is that every single person, good or bad, is a piece of God, right? And I like to think I don't like to personalize God. God isn't a person, it's not a being. It's, for lack of a better word or understanding, I like to think it is possible that God is simply just a multiverse itself, right? But going on like that, or continuing on with that, so we're all God, or pieces of God that's experiencing itself. Much like a simulation trying to solve a question, everything is important. Every good, every bad decision has equal importance to, I don't know, bringing us all together. Anyway, so this god broke itself into the becoming of what's known as the universe, or maybe multiverse. Um, I suppose it would be that, a multiverse. But in the grand scale of everything, it comes down to the building blocks of this god or creator of everything, whatever you want to name it. This is why many religions all either have one god or many, because, well, to be frank, those are all valid, images of God. But honestly, I think it's kind of foolish to give an image to the creator, but just a mutual agreement that everything is connected to a single point. I swear, this kind of stuff can make you feel very, very small. You know, every human life, if they're lucky, can live to 100, maybe even past 100. But, you know, it's crazy. It really is. So, I guess that's really it for that topic for now. I mean, I can maybe go deeper or try to pull at more strings or lines in this case, change my multiverse frequency. But, I mean, there was some other things I wanted to talk about. Like, I was kind of coming home from work yesterday, and I kind of had this weird revelation, right? I was thinking about, how fucked up it kind of is that, we have to wait until we're 65 to retire. And I really started to sit down and do the math of it all, right? Because these are the numbers that matter the most. And when you think about it, you're really throwing your whole youth away working for arguably a machine. So anyways, I was doing the math. I came home from work. I was sitting in my car. Um, I don't know. The blood was pumping through the through the brain, and I was just thinking, in the first several years of life, you know, maybe up until you're, let's say, hypothetically, you start school at 5, right? I'd imagine kindergarten. Not really sure if it's 4 or 5. Anyways, that's kind of irrelevant. So, you for the first 5 years of your life, you're 100% free. You are learning on your own terms. You're experiencing life, not in the shackles of the school system or the work system. Those first 5 years of your life is when you're the absolute freest, within reason. Obviously, you're a child, and your mother or your father is taking care of you. You're not, you know what I mean. So at that point, when you start school, for the next 13 years, let's say you graduate at 18. Most people graduate at 18. So let's say for those 13 years, you're in school until you're 18. You graduate. Now, obviously, you have a choice. You don't have to ultimately hop right into work and start working. You can go to college, but again, you're still in a school system, so you're technically not free. But yeah, so let's say hypothetically, right out of high school, 18, you get a job, right? Let's say you're a good worker, right? Like, you don't switch jobs, or if you do, you automatically have a backup plan. You're ready to go to the next. You are now in the work system. You're still not free, right? You have to work to survive, or if you're living with your parents, what have you. Maybe you don't have to live to survive. You can save money, what have you, whatever. But we're under this, poison mindset that you must work. You have to work, right? So you work, hypothetically, most people, they work right out of high school all the way up until they're ready to retire. So, I mean, if you do the math, what is it? So 18 to 65, what is it, like 47? My math might be off, but I'm too lazy to actually do the math. Um, maybe it's not. I don't know. So 47 years more. And, so let's see, 47 plus, if you want to count the school, which is what, 13 years? So 47, 13. Yeah, it's just mind boggling how now, when you finally hit 65, you know, if you really think about it, not every human being is going to live to 100. That's just some. Ideally, that's the best case scenario, is that you're gonna live to be 100 or more. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. We don't. Ultimately, if I had to give a better rounded number, it would either be 85, maybe 90. Those just seem like way more logical, conclusions of, when you might die, right? And, it really hit me kind of hard, because it's like 65 to, let's say, 80 or 85, just for a well-rounded number. If you live to 85, that's only 20 years that you're ultimately getting for yourself, plus the 5 in the start. So 25 years of your majority of your life. And I just think that's completely unfucking fair. 20 you get 25 years of your lifespan to be free, give or take. You're still within the laws and restrictions of the government. You still have to, pay rent, or pay your mortgage or what have you. You're not technically free from everything, right? Like, you will still owe somebody money until the day you finally croak. And I really was thinking about it last night. It's like, if there are other planets, other universes that harbor life, how lucky must it be for them, especially if they live for hundreds of years, and even from the very get-go of their life. Ideally, we want to visualize this, but we don't really know. But how saddening must it be for an outside civilization to look down on us and just be so saddened by our life. And my dad always made, like, and he still does, it's not like he's not dead, he's alive and well, but he always makes these connections that we're all like these well-oiled machines. And to some degree, thinking about it more and more, I kind of am starting to agree. Now, when he says it, he just means that, we're these well-oiled machines that if we take care of ourselves, then we can live a long time. But my understanding of, how I visualized that, and I put it into my own meaning, is that we are all these cogs in this, like, workforce, in this machine, if you will. And so, yes, we are all just parts in the machine. We eventually age out, we get old, and we just need to be replaced, right? For a newer, younger part or person. If you haven't caught on yet, I'm making the analogy that people are parts, and the machine is just this working, just totalitarian system, I guess you could say, right? And it's so saddening how many years we are just forced to be like a simple cog in this machine. And then once we're of no use, we're thrown out and replaced, and that's it. That's it. And it's just baffling, because there's just, I don't want to work my whole life away and be at an age where ultimately I just can barely survive, right? Like, especially now, like a younger generation. I'm a millennial, so when I'm finally able to retire at 65, if there's even a retirement system, which scares the living shit out of me to think that there might not be, but people speculate that there might not be. So, it's like, I don't want to reach a point where it's just all been for nothing. And, the people who know me know that I'm at the moment kind of cheating capitalism. So I'm kind of like, and not in an illegal way, just in the sense that the job I have, I get paid for 8 hours, even though we're able to leave when the job is finished. So most nights are like 3-4 hours, maybe 5 at the most. And no matter what, as long as the job's done, we get paid 8. So honestly, I would love to see that kind of push towards everybody's job. Stop fucking forcing people to be at a job for 8 hours when the job only merely takes 5. Stop being a bunch of fucking assholes. Pay them 8 hours and, let them leave. Let them have a fucking life. Please, for the love of God. Please. Anyway, going back to a previous tangent. I know it sounds as though after giving that description of my work that I'm biased and that I don't give a shit about other people. But ultimately I do. And it pains me to see how my father, how hard he works and how I don't even since his early or mid 20s or whatever, he's just been working every fucking day with, barely any time off, barely, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to reach that point in my own life where I'm, in my 50s and, or, get up to my 60s or whatever, and it's just like, okay, now I can finally breathe, and these monthly checks that I get from retirement aid or what have you is just barely enough to get a decent place to survive. And it's just, I'm terrified of being old, and I'm terrified of, possibly getting dementia or some weird mind ailment that, I don't want to be old and impaired to some degree where I just can't function how I function now. And it's not fair that, we have to wait until we're just that old and decrepit to retire. I hate that. Not everybody can be super fucking healthy when they're in their 65 or when they're in their 65, when they're in their 60s, It's like, yes, there are people that are doing very fucking well in their 60s, but for the vast majority of people, that might not be the case. And yes, you could argue that technology is only getting better, medicine's only getting better. The projections are looking very good for, young people that can, who knows, maybe live until 200. That doesn't change the fact that I don't think it's fair that, 65% of your life, 70% of your life is thrown away into this just system. Look, education's good. Don't get me wrong, right? Like, education is very important. But it's like, how much of that education is actual life skills that you'll be fucking using throughout your life? Questionable. Anyway, I don't want to make this too long because I don't want to just go on a tangent, but you kind of get the picture of how the world works just from these rambles and what have you. Anyway, my name is Mike. This is Down Low Radio. I know this is kind of scuffed off the books, but I don't know. I kind of enjoy having this platform to more or less just be an outlet for me. And yes, there might not be a direction with this podcast, but if you stuck around, if you listened to the fast-paced ramblings, I really do appreciate it. I know this is getting kind of mushy and whatever, but I love you. I love me. I hope you love yourself. live your life to the best you can. Find enjoyment out of every little thing. Yes, there's good days. Yes, there's bad days. Remember that even on your worst, fucked up, terrible days, if you push through long enough, there will be good. Just pay attention to the good, and everything will work out. Everything will work out. So I'm signing off, and I hope that it won't be another 6 months to a year that I come back. But yeah, so this is Mike from Download Radio. I'm out, and goodbye.
The truth shall set you free.